Today on Escalation, we're joined by Jonas, Ohman, a veteran activist, but best known today as a co-founder of Blue Yellow, one of the most impactful civil society initiatives supporting Ukraine's resistance against Russian aggression. Since 2014, Blue Yellow has provided tens of millions of euros worth of non-lethal military aid, from drones and night vision equipment to vehicles and tactical gear, directly to Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. Based in Lithuania, their organization has become a symbol of grassroots solidarity and strategic agility, often operating faster and more flexibly than state institutions. Born in Sweden, but rooted in Lithuania, Jonas has long been attuned to the dynamics of Lithuania's transformation and authoritarian threats. In this conversation, we explore what led him to mobilize civil society for war effort, how he sees Ukraine evolving under fire, and what Europe must do if it wants to remain free. Let us in a little bit of your journey, first of all, until Lithuania, what brought you to here?
Well, obviously, long story short, as a student, I got involved with Lithuanians back in '89. It was in Poland. And back then, I must say that when we asked, where are you from? And they said Lithuania, I had no idea what they were talking about back then because, it was kind of a part of whatever, Russia, Soviet Union. And very quickly after that, it got very clear what Lithuania is, that we heard about Sąjūdis, we heard about Landsbergis, obviously.
But the other one?
The other one, yeah, the older one, senior. And was a very impressive.
So you arrived at 89?
No, I arrived first time physically to Lithuania in 1990, and I think in April, about a month after the Independence Declaration. So it was a very interesting time. It was very unclear. I was, the things were my heroes, standing up at that point against him as a Soviet big monster and actually saying no. That was, I should be honest, like everybody else, like me, these guys, oh my God, what are they doing? And obviously the Lithuanians had a very good idea what they were doing, but just everybody else didn't fully understand, I guess. So I stayed, I learned the language, I did other things. I'm like a very, shall we say, creative person, I guess, artist type of, so I made films, I translated books. But again, I have a past in Sweden. I served in the Swedish Airborne Rangers, kind of intelligence unit. And I understand what Russia is, the military, Soviet Union / Russia. I see something, I know what it is. So, and when the time came, when Crimea happened, it was obvious to me what's going to happen now.
Well, Lithuanians are still surprised when they find out that you are not Lithuanian because of your perfect language skills and, the way that you're integrated. How well, how were you accepted? How was the beginning? People should have been surprised. A young person from Sweden chose Lithuania as his home.
I'd probably say, yeah, people obviously were surprised and had lots of, what are you doing here? What do you want to achieve? And of course, I couldn't really tell for myself at the beginning. I just wanted to be here. And to me, let me say, Lithuania to me is like a Hotel California experience. You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave. I tried to leave once or twice, but, unsuccessfully. And here I am. And at this point, I even have a passport. I'm very proud of that fact, provided by the then president, Grybauskaitė, back in a couple of years ago. Ironically, partly for my service to Ukraine, physically. So that's another part of the story. And I also learned Russian in the process. I learned Latvian fairly well. And also I now also learned Ukraine.
Yeah, I've just heard you speak Ukrainian.
Yeah. Sounds, at least to my ears, sounds fluent. Well, it kind of is. So it's, I love it. And I think it's one of my hobbies, I guess.
I have a question about Swedish strategic culture. Would you say that, I'm sure that you keep in touch. Your relatives are, I'm sure, still there. But how well do Nordic countries, and specifically Sweden, do understand the threat?
Well, they are worried enough. Let's put it that way. And that is something that I've noticed over, especially the last years, but a little before that, people definitely take notice. Mm-hmm. And we're not only talking about, governments. My mother is a great example. She's now, she's like 88 years old now, but she follows the news. And from time to time, she refers to the situation and she's a little worried about me, I guess. But also her experience is interesting. She was a child during the Second World War, and her family accepted Finnish refugees from Karelia back then. So they had like this experience of kind of Russian aggression as a child. So she's very sensitive. How much they actually understand, that's another question.
There is a difference, I would assume, between this side of Baltic and...
Definitely. Oh, yeah, a lot. I mean, Baltic people and Poland, I mean, obviously it's a much, much closer, relationship, if you want to use that word, to this whole thing. Obviously, historic experience, and of course also kind of, I'd probably say in the Baltics and Lithuania, for instance, the integration of the Soviet Union also helps now in some ways, language, some kind of understanding of Russia as the imperialistic ambitions. Though I must say that over the last years, more and more often I have to explain to, say, Lithuanians what Russia actually is.
You want to Lithuanians?
Yes, especially to younger generation. They have a very, very different understanding of life, which is great. I mean, I think, it's about being creative, being, tolerant.
This generation.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of crazy stuff that's happening in the border, if you want to use that word, is like this. It's just unimaginable. Why would you do something like that? And
do you think that the war the full-scale invasion changes that, or still?
I can just refer to, I also trying to communicate with people from other countries such as Germany, and I have some German connections, and they told me that until the full scale, until Russia actually openly attacked Ukraine, they were against any army. No army, no armed forces. Why do we need, nie wieder Krieg? So never war again. And now they say that have definitely changed that. They understand why they need a Bundeswehr. They understand why armies are necessary. So things have changed, definitely.
Well, I would like to talk a little bit about your organization. It's called Blue Yellow. Is it true to say that Blue Yellow is among the top NGOs that provide assistance to Ukraine?
Yes. I'd probably say we are, at this point, I would probably say top 10. In Western Europe, European Union, we are the biggest organization providing military aid to Ukraine. And we do not hide that. We provide, I probably at this point, maybe 95% of what we provide Ukraine is some kind of military aid. Non-lethal
military aid.
Military aid. And we're at this point, total roughly 100 million euros.
How big part of it comes from Lithuania?
About 90%.
90%?
Yes. We do have other sponsors. We do have others. And also we do have affiliations, say, in the U.S. But I must say that Lithuanians, well, what happened basically recalling what happened back in 2014 when I and some other people, we saw what happened in Crimea and then in Donbass afterwards. And I understood very well that I have to do something about this. Really, really back then scared me. That was actually not Russia, but the reaction from the West. We all recall the deeply concerned that,
You mean 2014?
Yes, yes. And that, me living in Lithuania, and I got this idea of a similar scenario, say, playing out here, separatists, whatever, protecting, defending Russian, blah, blah, blah. And the world, like, oh my God, we are deeply concerned again. So this time I say, I gotta go. I considered fighting for a second, but now I gotta help these guys. So, and we had the backing of the Lithuanian, people already back then. Not as now, but.
So Blue Yellow started in 2014.
Yeah. Okay. Our first support was during summer 2014, and then we started for real during autumn. I think if I recall correctly, end of August or something, we actually went to, of all places, Donetsk airport the first time, and it was
And you were personally there?
Yes, I was there. I'm trying to go in also now, roughly, let's say, once a month or once every 1.5 months or something. We also have other teams. I'm not the only one here going, and we also have some people in Ukraine almost all the time.
Can you tell a little bit what sort of assistance that you provide?
Again, it's very important to stress that we are providing no lethal aid, meaning no guns, no ammunition, no explosives, stuff like that. However,
because there are laws forbidding that, right?
Yeah. We are a civilian NGO. We can't do that. I'm not saying that if it will be permitted, I would not mind doing it, but that's another story. That's actually more about legislation and stuff. And I think that we can feel the difference between the various donors. Some are more like somebody on the soft side. They want to help civil population and provide medical aid, etc. But we also have other donors that they want to kill Russians, basically. So, and of course, we take that into consideration. I wouldn't mind providing, if you had provisions, donations from, say, governmental structures, I would definitely know how to use them. That's a tricky one, but because I see the point is that I see we have some advantages, like a state level, centralized, government to government. They don't. We are faster, more accurate, and so.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. What is the role of the NGO?
Yeah.
You probably are one of the best placed people to tell that. The governments do this, but, in the future, non-governmentals will still have a role.
Well, let's put it this way. This war has shown us many things, among other, that many things that you can actually get on the, commercially, you can actually buy them off the shelf. They have proven extremely useful in this war. And the stuff that is available to NGOs, say, one of the primary examples, of course, is drones, various kinds. You can see that every day.
Are drones the main thing that you contribute to the war effort?
At this point, yes. We probably say, give or take 70% of our what we provide is drone related. It could be accessories, it could be equipment, it could be anti-drones, jammers. But, yes, and also this is also corresponds with another figure that I just learned a couple of weeks ago. I just learned that about 70, maybe even 80% of the injuries sustained and provided to the stabilization points are drone related. So drones is a very important part of our support.
So it's a drone war, basically.
It's not only a drone war. That would be to say too much. It's changing the theater quite dramatically. It's not only about that, but I can give you. I had a conversation with a brigade commander some time ago in Ukraine, and he told me that in the future, of his estimation, that very experienced soldier and commander, so in the future, I expect the number of infantry that we will use is maybe 20 to 30% of what we see now. We can just imagine how warfare is reshaping itself as we speak.
Let's go back a little bit to your time in 2014. Right?
Yes.
What is different? How did the country change?
Obviously, Ukraine is by now, from a security perspective, is much more serious. Back then, it was, I should be honest, more like a Mexico. It was like some kind of very, but everything was confusing. Everything was blurred. It was like kind of like chaos that we met.
Okay.
And one of the issues, of course, back then was that the lack of adequate equipment. They had weapons, yes. They did, but there were, all the other stuff that you need for actually efficient warfare. It wasn't there, or it wasn't, in the right place. And I saw lots of examples where, for instance, the idea of the logistics in Ukraine and our forces is very linear. It's the Soviet concept. So everything has to come from this specific source and had provided all the way. And we came in, and we had a very different approach. We had, dealing with everybody. And I remember, for instance, I was going in and we had a good idea of what's happening. I remember going into, for instance, the Bakhmut area. And I realized I had a better idea of some of the units to the left and to the right than actually the soldiers in the position. There were moments like that. Obviously, somebody up here had the information, but it wasn't like dispersed in the proper way, I think, down to the the line of battle.
Did they learn, when, after, okay, let's call it in between the two invasions, the two attacks?
Yeah.
Or did the second attack, the full-scale invasion, had the biggest effect on the...
It's a tricky question. I mean, on the one hand, of course, you have 8 years of war. Obviously, things change. Obviously, some things, they prove to work. And some commanders, I probably say Saluzhny is a very good example of that. Actually, people being promoted in the system to an adequate position, and also others.
Was a good...
I think so. Yes, he was
the right person in the right place.
Yes, yeah. Oh, definitely. Especially at the beginning of the war, he was definitely the right person in the right place. Then we had some politics, blah blah blah, and see how this plays out. But but also, of course, experience of war in itself. I mean, it hardened the units, provided, extreme experience, both fighters and commanders. And I probably say, we're now looking at a war of the probably lieutenant colonel, meaning that people that started this war back in 14 or 15 or something, and they actually went for all the way. And we can now see that they are actually starting to actually take some serious positions. And actually, these guys are, so to speak, raced in this war. So, yeah, of course. But then again, of course, did the NATO effort did it make a difference? I would say yes and no. And bring in a very interesting example here. National Guard of Ukraine, relatively small unit, like at that point, like 5 brigades, and they were actually by the Canadians a lot. They provided them, training all levels, and it made a difference. It made a difference.
At the beginning, you mean?
No, in the long term. I mean, you can see the National Guard units they're very serious, actually. They're fully at the same level as the regular forces. Again, of course, the full scale gave some really serious, challenges provided, in many ways, both in terms of the war itself, but also, of course, in mobilization, training, etc. Why it's not perfect? It's not perfect at all, but it works. I probably say that in many ways, I mean, from a positive side, there's always the bad side and the good side of everything in war, but it has forced the Ukrainians to actually step up and actually get serious about what they're doing. One of the reasons why they attacked was that they were convinced that Ukraine will not put up a serious defense. And they were obviously very wrong, which they had some ideas about, people, even gonna greet them with flowers, whatever. And it kind of like, it's still a kind of riddle how that happened, but, wishful intelligence, I guess, or something.
I would like to, to get back a little bit also to, blue, yellow activities and, because it's quite fascinating. Really, then the numbers are staggering. Could you run a little bit through the process? How does it work logistically?
It's kind of simple. Of course, it's not simple as we say, but it's not complicated. We basically get requests, unit level, as a rule. This could be a brigade, could be a regiment, could be even a battalion sometimes, and they ask for something specific. By now, obviously, we have a very good idea what they would ask for. We have probably 20 positions, this kind of drones, blah, 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 this kind of electronic warfare equipment, this kind of, and cars, obviously. So we have a very good idea, and we try to provide according to that what we can. Do you bring some of it yourself? Yeah, of course. And here I can give you one interesting perspective that is actually one of our biggest problems. Poland obviously is a very pro-Ukrainian. They obviously have their own interest there, but they have another culture I want to use in bureaucracy of permissions and licenses, and they want to control everything. It's actually rather frustrating.
Have you had stories where something would be stuck at the Polish?
Of course, yeah. There have been many stories. And we have our own stories. We get documents even from Warsaw, from the Ministry of, of Innovation, as it's called. We have the right to bring these equipment because there's a letter from the ministry saying that we can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Wait here. I know we can stay for 6 hours or something, and we can see that the system is not synchronized inside. There are issues that, the outskirts, they kind of take their liberties, and we know what to do, and we, as a rule, can figure it out.
What is your experience with the donations since the beginning of full-scale invasion until now?
We would say the beginning was actually, it was staggering. I obviously, I was at wars coming, and I understood that donations will, grow, but not like that. I mean, I had no idea. In the first month, weeks, we gathered, probably tens of millions of euros,
Just in Lithuania?
Yes, no, not only Lithuania, but basically Lithuania. Mm-hmm. Obviously, at that point, we were kind of like a household name in terms of Ukrainian conflict. Everybody knew about us, and many, especially companies, they spontaneously transferred, say, 100,000 euros. People felt they needed to do something, and we were the go-to solution for that. So after that, yes, it's not like that dramatic, but we pulled in, dare I say, in between roughly €1 million per month, and mainly from Lithuania.
But what is your guess? I mean, there are other countries, right, who have similar emotion towards Ukraine. So you would guess that other countries would be doing the similar thing. Why
this small country, and actually we are the biggest organization?
Yes.
I think there are a couple of explanations. One, of course, the very positive relationship with Ukraine. We have a special history. We have the duchy. We have a kind of, should we say, shared historical sphere, I guess. It's also very important to mention that the Soviet oppression, which was similar in many ways in the Baltics and, of course, in Lithuania and Ukraine. When I talk to older people who were in Gulag, etc., every single one, they refer to their Ukrainian friend. No, every single one. They had somebody, that, and they were in the camp together. They had to go. They kept contact afterwards. And also, of course, one interesting historical fact is that the armed resistance against Soviet Union after the Second World War was strongest in Lithuania and in Ukraine. Those were the countries that definitely stood out as, making armed resistance against the occupier. Not Latvia and Estonia. Yes, they were, of course, resisting too, but not like this, not like in Lithuania and not like in Ukraine. And we have also very important, we have no negative history. We have nothing bad. If you go to Poland, there are issues. They have the Volhynia, they have some issues, especially from the pre-war and also even the post-war period that are very, very sensitive, even today. But also I have this one explanation. Another explanation I think is very important to take. Lithuania, we have something very interesting here that goes, they call it defense vertical. What I mean by that is that all layers of society, it could be government, media, business, non-governmental, we have a similar perception of the threat. It's not like, in many other countries, the government, they have a better understanding of it, but where society is less, shall we say, engaged. They're worried, but say in Scandinavia, but they're not engaged in this emotional way, I guess. And also we have something interesting in Lithuania. We have a very tight society, not in a personal sense maybe, but, sweet here. I'm not Lithuanian. And I probably say I may not know everybody in Lithuania, but I know somebody who knows. And also I think we have another good thing is kind of interesting here. Lithuanians do not, as a politician, I think you agree with me here, we do not fully trust the authorities, right? So we have a kind of little, yeah, sure, but. Yeah. And I think sometimes this, like a lack of trust, actually is a good thing. It means that you think, including me, I got to do something myself as well, just to make sure. Mind you, it also goes both ways. When the Lithuanian Maidan happened back in 91, the people surrounded their own parliament. They supported their own, the government. So we have this a different, this moment, especially surrounding the parliament, protecting the authorities. This is another thing. When you need to, you can curse them a little bit, but when you have to, you gather and you do something.
Yeah. I know that you spoke out and I guess that you consult sometimes, authorities here in Lithuania about what you see in Ukraine. So you're very close to the war. You know the Ukrainian needs. Is your view, would it be that we've learned the lessons? And I'm not talking just, geopolitical, that's,
yeah, of course,
but about military. Do we understand what is the war in 21st century and how it might be fought?
Well, as always, probably yes and no. I think the lessons are striking home as we speak. We start at least to fathom actually what we are facing. But on the other hand, no, because we were busy creating something else. For instance, taking the European Union. European Union is a peace project. I'm not saying that European Union anyway is guilty of that Russia, attacked Ukraine, but they have certain responsibility. We must understand that when we offer the European Union, we offer this kind of part membership or what you call it to Ukraine. So that was a big red flag for Russia. Because we had another understanding. They have a very different, worldview. So, and this is still playing. We're still producing, say, less artillery ammunition than most here. Because we are still in this kind of, nice mode, let's put it that way. I see that over and over. I see how the armed forces and especially leadership, the policymakers of the armed forces in the West more generally, they have their understanding of war, which is, of course, formed by the Cold War and post-Cold War. And they have a very big issues to actually get out of that mindset because that's how they're shaped.
I've heard the story. I've heard it from one instructor that is doing some training in Ukraine, and privately, he told a story about, so the textbook, one of the NATO textbooks that, that they're using to teach Ukrainians, tells them that you can never throw a grenade if you're entering a second floor. You cannot throw it up.
Yeah, right.
And and Ukrainians were always curious, like, why is that? I mean, it's kind of, for them, it was bizarre, right?
Yeah,
what is, what made you kind of have this rule? Apparently, when the rule book was written, it was written by Brits, and the floor, the ceiling of the, dividing the first and second floor is usually wood. That means that if you throw,
right,
it might collapse on you. While there are basically no wooden houses, concrete. So my point is that, we are, at least, I have this feeling when I was in government that we are of the predisposition that we go to Ukraine to teach. We send instructors from Lithuania, serious people, and they are the most serious people. But I mean, 3 years of the latest incursion in invasion, total of 8 years of war. Shouldn't they be actually teaching us?
Well, I probably put it this way. Ukrainians are great warriors. They are not so great managers. In terms of war, they have a pretty good idea of what works. And they also have these kind of innovations. And this is actually a great story. I heard other stories, for instance, Ukrainians going to the UK for training, and they're being taught how to take care of, an insurgency, Afghanistan. And how these ideas stay way behind when they were actually useful. We are preparing for the last war, which of course is devastating because you have to pay in blood to actually keep up. So I would probably say, in terms of war developments, sometimes by the week of new ideas and new, shall we say, ways to kill Russians in this case.
Because Russians are doing exactly the opposite. So basically,
Russians, of course, they're also learning and they're actually adapting things. And I think I should be very blunt here. And I think that we are still in this rule mindset. We are not supposed to do this for whatever reason, because it's written, because it's, in the book, whatever. And Ukrainians, they are in it to kill Russians. And I think we should probably, actually change our mindset. I have talked to soldiers. I give you one interesting example. Denmark. Danes are very good warriors, and they are definitely, I can feel they want to go, they want to get into it, but they are kind of held back by the system. And I talked to an officer who said, good, we need three things. We need, obviously, the right to return to service after having been in Ukraine. We need some kind of life insurance, and we need some kind of secure payment, kind of salary, basically. That's it. And
you would have volunteers.
And you would have volunteers there. We unleash us, basically. And the system, with all its own regulations and things, they're kind of well, let's think about it, but not taking any decisive decisions. It's the will. It's a political will thing. But no.
Have you encountered, a country, it could be your own country, that you would say, okay, they are serious about learning the lessons and kind of taking in, preparing
Finland, obviously, Finland. I want to say there, maybe I can give you one example. They have actually made even a TV series, the Conflitti, about how Russia actually attacks Finland. And obviously it's a propaganda thing, but it also actually, they're trying to figure out how to actually deal with this, shall we say, a situation like that, including some hybrid. And so Russia is the aggressor. It's not about some unknown. No. And also, of course, knowing that they never forget the lessons learned from the past. So if I was to single out one country, I give you one example. I have some acquaintances around the Finnish government. And when the Russians, the full scale happened, they kind of disappeared for some time, maybe 2 weeks, and are kind of gone. Kind of eventually, sorry, I have been in some exercises for 2 weeks, actually, learning how to adapt to a new situation, a full-scale war, etc. So the Finns are very serious. Yeah. Are we that serious here? No, we're not. We're trying to. We are getting there, but we're still way far away from it.
Well, that sounds not so reassuring, but in principle, I share your assessment. I have a sense that we are caught somehow in this situation where the decision makers, let's call it like that, they believe that it is better to calm people down not to start, some wide-ranging panic or something like that. Somewhere down the line, there is a different kind of panic where people will start to, or they're probably starting to understand more, the way that the situation is progressing, rather than government lets them in. But when you feel anxious, the government saying, don't be, but you still feel anxious.
And it's going to burst at some point. Yes. And I think that's, again, very different reasons for that. It's not, we can talk about Lithuania where that's definitely the case. And I'm not happy with the governmental, the kind of calm down. Nobody is asking anybody to panic here, but it's a political thing about our past that we must understand that this kind of like the patriotic narrative is a very associated with some political forces, the right, conservatives as yourself, visiting all these parties and events, etc. Whereas this narrative, the Social Democrats, they have it's not part of their story, basically. And they're kind of afraid if we let this in, we will have political issues.
Because their voter might not understand.
The voter may maybe not agree with it, blah, blah, blah. But it's also more general. It's also not only about Lithuania, it's about everybody, calm down because the government know what they are doing. And that is, I think at this point, including the hybrid warfare we're seeing, war or not, it's not really clear what's happening here. This general European narrative, let's have a summit, let's have a conference, let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk. And so it's about like decision makers' confusion about actually how to deal with it. I've seen your obviously rhetorics over time. I really approve of it. You're one of the few voices that actually have been very, very clear about what's happening here. We now see some more Estonians, for instance, even sometimes the Germans, and the generation, if you want to use that, basically born and raised at the very end of the Cold War, now, in charge, and they have a very different story. They're afraid to lose this, they don't want to go back to the Middle Ages, so to speak, and everything. And here we are.
Now we have an additional element in all this, right? What you could call the realignment of our greatest transatlantic partner.
Oh my God! Don't get me started. Yeah.
United States, and their position,
which is of course extremely confusing for a country such as Lithuania. All the time, we are waiting for the Americans. It's a part of our narrative. We are waiting, maybe in vain, but we are still waiting.
The Forest brothers were waiting,
and they waited, and we then they eventually kind of came. They kind of like got here, and now will actually the U.S. stand up to its promises? Remember George Bush, and now we have somebody else who's saying very different things. Rules are going to be different, and who is my ally today may not be my ally tomorrow. And it's not only worrisome, but it's also confusing for a country and theirs. So we have some really serious decisions to make for the future.
But you keep contact with Ukrainians, and especially Ukrainian army,
all the time.
What is their take?
I feel surprised. Well, Ukrainians are sure less, I'd probably say, naive than that. I'm no huge illusions about, European loving us or whatever, but we have no choice. That they understand they got to figure this out. And I tell them more. Yesterday, I had a conversation with some soldiers in one brigade, and they said, you can't believe this, but we actually got questioned if such a need would arise, would we be willing to go and actually defend Lithuania? I'd say many of us, they say yes. The thing is that these soldiers, they were very proud to tell this to me. It's kind of many of us actually signed up for this.
Oh, wow.
So, things are actually changing in very interesting ways around us.
So in their mind, basically what you're saying, in their mind, the defense of their country is basically solely their own responsibility.
First of all, yes, they have to, but they understand that they have to stand behind or stand beside their partners. In this case, say Lithuania or countries in this area, they understand that this is a common enemy and this is like a regional issue. And I would not be surprised if we in the near future, in one way or another, would see some kind of more, like, shall we say, active, declaration from Ukraine that they're willing and able to actually partly defend, say, Lithuania. It's an upside down, this security paradigm that we've been living.
Yeah, it's an amazing information for me, because understanding that we face the same threat. So for us to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians who actually were able to fend off, hold back and defend their country, that is an enormous reassurance. And, who knows with the world going where it currently is, that might be our...
I gotta give you a funny story. It's funny and it's kind of not. I had a lecture. I have these lectures with libraries or schools, whatever. And I had one some time ago, and we talked about the German brigade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was, of course, a great thing. I mean, faster the better. And then was one lady in the audience said, like, well, if I had a Ukrainian battalion in Lithuania, I would feel safe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So kind of like it told me something about the mindset. Ukraine for us here is a very serious, part. And with these guys, when they're saying whatever they're saying, and obviously, we must understand that the security concept that we have been living in for a very long time, it's actually changing in front of our eyes. And we have to adapt. I am adapting, I think, fast because I'm dealing with this all the time. I see it, I hear it, I feel it. And obviously relationships and communication, but we can see even in Lithuania, the government generally, they have a different view.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another story. I like stories. I was talking to U.S. soldiers in Rzeszów, not the commander, and they told me over a beer, like, if we got the order tomorrow to actually enter Ukraine, you cross the border and go into Ukraine, we would happily do it. So,
Yeah, there's...
depending on who you're talking to, yeah.
Jonas, thank you so much. That was a tremendously interesting conversation for me, and for the viewers as well. Is it possible to donate to Blue Yellow if you're not a Lithuanian citizen?
By all means, we do have sponsors all over the world, including Australia, including Israel, including South Korea. So yes.
What is the way?
But it's very simple. We have obviously, on internet, we have a site, but we have the site is in English as well. So yes.
Okay. So we'll try to promote it as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonas.
Slava Ukraine.
Slava.